You talk also about administrative incompetence. We've never hosted an election before in the middle of this kind of health crisis. What do you do? I mean, what do you've seen some of this already in primary season. Where do you think people should be watching most carefully to see if that becomes a truly explosive set of problems?
Well, the first thing we know is that no election is conducted perfectly, and that elections have all kinds of problems. We're going to have more problems because we're running an election during a pandemic. It's much more expensive. Congress only came up with about a tenth of the money that it takes to run elections efficiently in a pandemic, meaning that things are going to be done in a sloppy way. I'm especially concerned about Pennsylvania and to some extent Michigan and Wisconsin, three key Midwestern states that were part of Trump's Electoral College coalition, and states where they're getting a flood of absentee ballots, where they don't have the experience counting that many absentee ballots, where the amount of litigation over these ballots is now on its second trip to the United States Supreme Court, just out of Pennsylvania. And so I think if it came down to Pennsylvania, for example, and we actually had to look under the hood and see how the election's actually being run, I don't think we'd be too happy with what we see. And so I'm really hoping there's something called the election administrator's prayer, which is, Lord, let this election not be close. I really don't want it to be close in a place like Pennsylvania. One way or the other, Trump or Biden winning a clear victory would be much better for the country in terms of the election's legitimacy than the kind of hand-to-hand combat that we would see if the election went into overtime.
Is it a foregone conclusion in your mind that if the election is reasonably close, that it is aggressively contested on both sides?
I think there's no question about that. I mean, think back to 20 years ago, Bush versus Gore. People felt that Gore was not aggressive enough, and here he was, fighting for recounts, and there were almost 24 lawsuits. I mean, now we're in a social media era. We're much more polarized. Both sides see this as a kind of existential election about the future of the United States. So I think it would be litigated as much as possible. What we really need to see is a victory that's outside the margin of litigation, which means we don't come down to a very close vote in a swing state that's crucial for the Electoral College, or some kind of massive failure like a cyber attack or something else, a hurricane, something else that makes it impossible for someone to be able to vote in one of these key states.
So if it is contested, it is close, how much does a 6-3 conservative split in the Supreme Court actually matter?
So not only would it have to be close, right? It would have to be so close, like think Florida 2000 close, which was, within a few thousand votes, later got whittled down to a little over 500 votes.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column.
Have to be that close, and then there'd have to be something worth fighting over. And it would have to be crafted in such a way as to, come up with a theory that would swing the outcome of the election, depending on how the Supreme Court rules. I think if it gets to that and we get to the Supreme Court, we've seen the justices end up voting in ways that line up with their ideological and partisan preferences. I don't think that's because these justices are consciously trying to help their parties, but because the kind of theories that are proposed to them are ones that appeal to that side. So we'll see. But I think we're talking about a low probability event. Highly catastrophic, but low probability.